right? Welcome back. Okay. Hey, I got a question for you guys. What is blue but not as heavy?
What is blue but not as heavy?
Yeah, what is blue is not as heavy?
The sky?
Light blue.
Like
You're welcome.
total dad joke.
You're welcome. Hey guys, Aaron Cochran by Tennessee Dirt, team lead. I am here again today with Kerri Nasser, and she is one of our newer agents on our team. And wanted to have her in today because she has a very unique story. I think we're calling it after 17 houses, finally a home in Tennessee. Kerri, thanks for being with us. Introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your background, and tell us a little bit about some of these 17 houses. Like, where do these? Hopefully, they're not all in the same town.
No, they are not. So I was born in Mesa, Arizona. So I'm actually a Southern native in that regard. But when I was younger, we moved up to Washington, Spokane area,
Okay.
and just north of Spokane, and then the Idaho area. So I grew up most of the time there. So that's
What age did you move out of Arizona?
4.5.
Okay.
Yeah, that was unique. So
Like, we know southern staples of Tennessee. Like, what's a southern staple? Like, what's a food item from Arizona? Is Arizona known for food? Like, what is it?
I don't know if they're known for food, but I can tell you from my experience, watermelon. You're doing work out in the farm and in the fields.
I would have never guessed watermelon.
Yeah, well, that would be like sometimes we'd eat watermelon 3 times a day because your electrolytes. It's too hot to eat heavy food sometimes. But then I also very fondly remember my grandpa's orchard. Every morning growing up, we'd have fresh fruit from the orchard, and my grandpa was always like, "You got to have the grapefruit with no sugar. You got to do it first with no sugar."
I love grapefruit, by the way.
I love it.
Grapefruit juice. Everybody looks at me like I'm crazy in our house when I drink grapefruit juice. Like,
it's so good. And
I like bitter and tart.
I do too. And the funny thing is, though, is the grapefruit anywhere else has not been the same. It's different when it's off the tree.
You would never think of Arizona being like of orchards and things like that. But I remember when Cassandra and I moved cross country, we came through Arizona, and we'd been there before, but we never really paid attention to it. But there was a lot of orchards.
Yeah, there is. So irrigation's a way of life there when it comes to farming and things like that. And I remember some of the stories my dad would tell about them, hooking up to this board. They'd bend up the corners with the rope and tie it to the saddle of their horse, and then they'd have the horse run on the little median between the irrigated fields, and they'd ski across the water. Yeah, things like that. So we get creative about keeping cool and things like that. But yeah, it can be deserty, but there's some forest there too. So it's a unique type of beauty.
Yeah. So not to get stuck on Arizona, but sorry for interrupting on that. I was just curious, like, what food comes out of Arizona?
Oh, I remember when my dad was a truck driver. He was delivering and transporting crates of like melons and oranges, nectarines, grapefruits, things like that. And I remember just some of the things I remember seeing them offload at once, and I was like, oh, I really want one of those. Right? That's one of those memories.
So what took you guys to 17 different homes? Like, I know your parents were entrepreneurs and all that type of stuff, and they still are.
Yeah. So that's definitely quite a longer story. I know that. So it's very.
You weren't military, just to clear.
No, not until
that's everybody's probably first guess. They're like, "Show, she's a military brat."
Yeah, very common question. Were you military? Nope. It's very hot in Arizona, and so I just know that there was a few places I lived when I was younger there. One of the 2 homes I remember the most were my grandparents' home, which we stayed in when we were transitioning. We bought a travel trailer when I was younger to move up here or up into north of Spokane, Washington, where my parents bought land at the time. And so the house before that, it was like the original tiny home, one room shack with a loft and outhouse, and we bathed out in those little basins and stuff. What is like the old wash tub basins until we built the bathroom. And I remember helping my dad with the concrete and doing all that and everything. So that was fun. Catching lizards and things like that in the fields. Mind you, 4 years old. That's a different time, different area. So from what I understand is it was my dad got a transfer with jobs and then also wanted a land and a cooler place. And so I don't know a whole lot more about it. It just wasn't something that we needed to talk about.
So you said we were going from Arizona to Spokane, Washington.
Yeah, so it was north of Spokane, Washington,
Okay.
in a little place called Deer Park. And
Nice.
he's still out there today with my stepmom, and about a little over 5 acres out there. And I mean, there's still a tree that we planted when I was 5 that I got from school out there, and it's like 40 feet tall now, things like that. So it's some really cool memories. So yeah, I even remember watching my dad dig out the driveway for this property with a flathead shovel.
Nice.
So it was fun. So it was a lot of good memories. So there was one home or 3 homes technically that I remember and know of that I know that I had been around in Arizona. And then the 4th one would have been where my parents moved to up north of Spokane in Deer Park. And so that we're there for quite a while. My parents did split fairly early on after that, around when I was 6 or 7. And so then obviously my mom had her home, my dad stayed where he's at. So went to Washougal, Washington for a short while, lived with my grandparents over there.
Washington?
It's called Washougal.
Washougal? Am I saying that right? Washougal?
Yeah.
I want to see how our transcript picks that up. Washougal.
I know.
Washougal.
It's
Say it with me
interesting.
now.
I just remember, so it's really close to the Columbia River. So you've got one side that's Washington, the other side is Oregon.
Okay.
And I remember, it looked like a rainforest to me. It was one of my favorite places. It was so beautiful. I remember my grandpa's his big old machine shop out there and everything like that, and the tire swings, all that, and a lot of greenery, very much similar to here in Tennessee. So,
and what age were you when you moved out of there?
About 7, 6, 7. Okay. So it's a little hazy against that.
Arizona to about 4. Washougal, Washington.
Yeah, for a short time. So it was a short time. It was a transition home kind of a thing where we were there for a while until my mom got another property. And actually, funny enough, that was around the time my mom became a realtor, was right before that. And so we stayed with my grandparents for a while. And then she ended up buying a home, which we stayed in, and that was in Spokane, Washington. And then right around the time that she met my stepdad, we moved to another home that was a little bigger, could accommodate his kids and my brother and I as well. So, blend our families and stuff. And so we were there for quite a while. And then around when I was, around 3rd grade, we ended up moving to Idaho.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I didn't know what all the other places previous to. I knew, just through our relationship about Idaho. So
yes, that has been where I've lived most of the time. So we lived in a place, and you're gonna love this name. People joke about these names even out there. A lot of Native American. Oh yeah, it does. So they're Native American names in origin. So the county is called Kootenai, but it's pronounced Kootenai. It's or like spelled.
Kootenai, Idaho.
It's pronounced Kootenai, but it's spelled like it says Kootenai. It's very interesting. It's a Coeur d'Alene tribe, things like that. But we lived in a town north of that called Athol.
I'm not even gonna go there. I'm not even gonna go there.
It beats it. It's a common joke out there, but it's so there's like Athol and Rathdrum over there, which is actually, there's a lot of history and stuff. Fun fact, there's a place out there that was it's called Farragut. It's one of our favorite parks to go to, and it's called Farragut State Park, and it used to be a World War II military base that has been decommissioned and is now a park. And so we grew up all over in that area.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So as your moves and all this type of stuff, like, how do you think that impacts your mindset as a realtor? Like,
Oh, a
you should have
lot.
a good understanding, both as a child, like how it, because that's something we don't think of.
No.
When people are moving from out of state or moving even within the state, like how does that impact my kid? Like I've always known like the rule of thumb, like you try not to move when the kid's in what junior high, high school, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And clearly, if you've been through 17, you're not that old. Like you had to have moved during those times as well. Like how does that impact a child? And like I don't know, how would you help nurture and navigate and make that
Yeah.
least impactful on
So
families?
yeah, so there was so much to learn from that, because for one, I mean, change was always hard. I never wanted to
Mhm.
move necessarily, but then there was a part of me that I love adventure too. So it was kind of like, ooh, new adventure, new people, things like that. But you always miss the old people. So for me, I remember thinking about that and navigating that quite a bit. Like, how do I, you know, what is this going to be like,
Mhm.
and what new adventures could, so I tried to be very open to it. So one thing I didn't mention that also kind of feeds into that is that when my stepdad came into the picture, he was a stonemason, and so then my parents started doing that for a while, and they went into granite fabrication and things like that. So built into our family structure from the very beginning of that connection of my family was we would remodel and flip homes that we lived in.
Okay.
So we would always buy homes, live in it, flip and remodel it as we go. And so I got to learn how to do tile work by 14, things like that. So I love to play with power tools. So I got to learn a lot of stuff with that. So I think that for me, in that moving transition, it kind of helped having my dad still stay. He's still till this day in that same spot that we first moved to in Deer Park, Washington. So when I'd go and visit, I had that as a type of grounding to be able to connect with people that I met when I first came here that became like family too. But at the same sense, I got to meet new people.
Yeah.
So I think that helping express, because a kid's not always going to see it as an adventure right away or a new opportunity, or I remember some of the conversations. It's we're not losing your old friends. It's just you're expanding on your friends. You're expanding on the people that you know and connect with.
Yeah. When Cassandra and I moved across country, technology. It's a new thing nowadays, and especially a lot of these kids, they understand technology and how it works. And one thing Cassandra and I use to stay in contact with people back in California and at a lot of places, we actually have it's called a Facebook portal, and it actually sits on our kitchen counter.
Mm-hmm.
And girls can go up there, and it connects through your Facebook, and it uses Facebook Messenger to communicate. Plus, it's built-in music and all that type of stuff too. But it's a big screen. It actually will rotate photos and stuff, and you can actually give your family and friends access to that album so that they can upload photos to it, and we'll have new photos pop up all the time of Grammy and Papa and Grandpa and all that stuff. And then the girls can go up there and they can push the button and they can see Grammy's photo, and they'll click it and then they'll call Grammy. And instead of just being a phone call, it's actually a video conference call.
I love
And it has a
that.
dynamic camera on it and stuff. So that's really been our saving grace. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not cheap, but it was probably $250. But we use it for more than just calls. But that's how we've stayed connected. We have what we call cocktail hours with friends sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just sit down and we'll set it up in the living room. We'll sit on the couch and we'll go through the Facebook Messenger thing, and we'll watch, and we'll just interact with other people,
Love that.
our friends and family and stuff like that. So we'll have a time set off that we can, go out to drinks or have dinner,
Right.
and we'll just, even though we're eating in our own homes. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can see more kids adapting to that nowadays.
I think that does help. I will say that it really did help shape and cultivate my ability and resilience to change in life and the people that come and go, because that's just a fact of life.
Oh, realize, and you and I are very similar age, and we didn't grow up in that mindset. Like
No.
I can remember when there's no cell phones.
Right. Oh my gosh, I still remember when I got my first cell phone. It was just because I was living out in a rural area, and fun fact, I got my license at 15 years old because in Idaho you can. So and driving out there and having a job, like, yeah, that was needed.
It's
So
okay. I got my own cell phone when I was 18.
yeah, I actually got mine at 15 because being out in the rural area, and then so being up in North Idaho, you get some pretty tough winters.
Yeah.
I have been pulled out of a ditch before with, my car hit some black
Have
ice
you
up
even
there.
lived if you haven't been pulled out of a ditch in life?
The what?
Have you even lived if you've never been pulled out of a ditch?
Oh,
Like, are you living on the edge enough?
oh my gosh, there's so much experience. I've lived a very full life
Yeah.
in many respects. So, and actually, I think I do contribute a lot of that to the different transitioning.
Hmm.
The different, because every new place. One thing you don't think about is every new place you're going to adapt a little bit differently to that area, that lifestyle, that environment, what's available to you, what patterns you get used to. You don't change to some degree, but then there's a part of you that does,
Yeah.
and that's something that people don't think about. And so I think that also helps me get better into that, going back to that, how does that help me with real estate?
Yeah.
It gets me into that mindset of like, okay, well, tell me a little bit about your history, what your goals are, what lifestyle works for you. What do you hope to add to that or change about it, in a positive way? Because I want to positively support your transition
Hmm.
in your life, and because that's going to uplift you with that next phase. And that can be a really that can have some that can go three ways, is three basic ways. One where it's just kind of like, one is like, oh, that was bad, and the other one is like, hey, this was great.
Yeah.
And that's the way I simplify it.
It's
uh,
amazing how many people don't understand how often people do move.
yeah.
There's a statistic that, it's everybody says, because every time we go look for a house, what are we doing? We're looking forever home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody,
Yeah.
everybody. The average forever home is 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're contemplating, even if you don't sell within 8 years, you're contemplating, go, okay,
Yeah.
well, I could do this and that. We thought our last house in California was our forever home.
Yeah.
I will die on this mountain that our current Tennessee home is our forever home.
Yeah. I would say the only true forever home I've seen are my grandparents' home. They're still there.
Yeah.
And my dad's home, where he ended up
Well,
staying and stuff. He's got it set up.
but they found a
But
property that was sustainable, that could grow with them and
mhm,
things like that. They didn't move into
right.
a condo in downtown.
Yes, so that is a huge deal. There is a big difference between, like, yeah, you can move into a place and have all these hopes and dreams and a viewpoint of a trajectory of this is gonna be our forever home, or we think it is. Like, but you know what? It is in that space and moment for what you know about yourself
Hmm.
in that moment. It can actually, we always are evolving and changing as personalities, interests, what we need, all of those things. And so that will always play a factor. And it's okay to be like, you know what, this was my forever home, but you know what, now we're kind of thinking that we want to be in this other space and place in our life. And then there's what I like to think of as transition homes, which are homes where, like, more of like that rental, that apartment living, which is different. It's not the same as purchasing. It's
Hmm.
when you purchase it, there's a different type of mentality of setting roots in, which will always be rooted in part of your history, more so than transition homes will.
Yeah, and
And
everybody will use a transition home for something different. So it could
mhm,
be maybe somebody's moving to the state that hasn't secured, the ideal job yet and things like that.
right.
So they don't want to set roots because they don't know where that career choice is going to be. But they may
Hmm.
have, you know, they still need to get here so they can search for that, and they need to use it as a
Hmm.
stepping stone, as you explained. So
Yeah, and that was something that you know we experienced when we finally, the last two different states that we've moved to. That was something that we experienced. We utilized that more in our transit. We've used it actually a few different times, just in different ways. So
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, I would say that there was definitely three, four different homes over in Idaho.
okay, She
Um,
stayed in Idaho for a little while. You
yeah,
just recently went back there, I think, too. So it's
to
there's
visit.
definitely roots there.
Yeah, we always try to go back and visit. You never know. To me, that's one thing that's always been very big is connection. Connection's huge. I think it's big for anybody on different capacities, but for me, one of those things that made a huge impact was I had a very strong connection to my grandparents when I lived in Arizona. So when we moved away, um, that was probably the hardest move for me
Hmm.
because I'd never been that far away from family that I had. It was the only family I'd known. And so even though I had my parents, it was a whole different learning curve. And that was something that very much has been a part of sticking with me and cultivated with me of understanding the importance of connection. So from there, I would try it really helps you narrow down and figuring out like who's important in your life,
Yeah.
and then learning how do you make connections, how do you initiate it when, because people's lives are busy too, and then when you're young, back before we had cell phones, and I still remember doing the rotary phone, when I would talk to
Yeah.
friends and stuff. And so like how did you stay connected, things like that. So
So how does Tennessee compare to all these other places that you've lived and things like that? Are you setting roots here, or are you? How long have you been in Tennessee now?
I would say over 2 years now.
Okay, so we've been
So
here
it's
a similar
fairly.
amount of time then, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That. So it's been a little over 2 years. I will say that when getting here, it really felt like a little bit more like home.
Hmm.
And I think and it's not because I've ever lived here before. It was because there are certain aspects of the culture, the people, the environment, um, that were things that I collected over the years that I identified as parts of I like this. This is very
Yeah,
much me. And one of those was the greenery and the trees and the variety of trees and
I
of
absolutely love how green Tennessee gets.
yes, and that was something that very much reminded me of my grandparents' place over in Washington. And
Polar opposite of Arizona.
yes, it is. And that's something is while there is a sense of beauty within Arizona that will
Oh, it's
there
it's on its own playing field.
it is. It doesn't you can't put them in the same comparison category. It is very different. And being that I've literally driven cross country and back, you you have to really categorize certain
Yeah.
areas as being that different. So I will say that yeah, there's I don't even know that I have been able to figure out all the different words of how Tennessee feels as of yet, but
So what do you think some of those cultural differences are that makes Tennessee feel so homey in your opinion, or welcoming,
ooh,
or
um,
granted that's a specific,
it is.
it's a very specific like why Tennessee makes you feel like home. It might not ever make everybody feel like home, but
Yeah.
what are those cultural differences that you've experienced in other states that
Oh
just don't
man.
reside out of this state?
Okay, so one of the ways that I grew up, I am very much a country girl. I love the country, love nature, outdoorsy, all that stuff.
Charlotte, my middle daughter, calls it crunchy girl, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
She's a
yeah.
crunchy girl.
Crunchy girl. I can relate to that a little bit there. I've always been that kid that I wanted to learn. Like, yeah, fun fact, I know how to drop spin wool and make wool out of nothing stuff. So that's just one of those things.
Why do I
Um,
have all the earthy people work on our team? I got
yeah,
Jordan sitting over here barefoot, cross-legged in the studio with us.
I know it's great. She's totally zenning out over there. um,
You teach her to spin wool. It'll just put icing on the cake for us.
there you go. I can make butter.
She's like, no.
I can make butter and cheese. Yeah, yep. So things like that. I actually know how to tan a hide. That is such a rare off.
That's a unique thing. Like I think tanning
Yes.
hide in California means a whole different thing than tanning hide in Tennessee. I think
Yeah.
tanning hide in California means that you're laying on the beach somewhere with your
Yeah.
butt cheeks hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does. It's totally different. So my in my background, my grandpa and my dad like straight up cowboys. like, real. My dad grew up going horsepacking, camping, like as a 14-year-old kid roaming around Arizona,
Nice.
so things like that. So, but so when it comes to thinking of here in Tennessee, that makes me feel like home. For one, people are very friendly here. That's very different. So living just outside of Houston, in the Spring Woodlands area, I lived there for 2.5 years during COVID. That was fun. And
Are you telling me
it was
Texas is not friendly?
it can be friendly, but the roads are not. No, the roads are not. That in and of itself, it was a culture shock. It was a huge shock. So to give perspective, we would fly over, coming in and flying in and out, visiting family and things like that. And I'm one of those. I love to do photography, and I love the way it looks up in the sky. And so I'll take pictures and look out the window a lot on the plane, and I just love to watch and observe. And it is so hard to wrap your head around how big that area is per capita. And I mean, I've been to California, and I've been to LA and things like that. I've driven from north side to south, or from south side to north side California. I mean, one of the routes going through Arizona would come through that way and go back up.
Yeah.
So I know what that's like, and it still blew my mind. So we found out that for the Spring Woodland areas, which is tiny little sub-towns, and I mean tiny in comparison to Houston, north of Houston, and there are more people per capita in those cities than all of the state of Idaho. And that is hard to wrap your head around. So again, very much small town country girl. I don't mind the big cities, but cities are very loud and noisy for me a lot of times. So
And this is coming from the girl that lives in Murfreesboro right now.
Yeah, well, I live just on the edge of
hustle and
Murfreesboro. I live on the edge of it, so which is nice. We found a space that's just under an acre that feels like you're in the country,
Yeah.
but you're like 10 minutes away from the grocery store in town. And so I do hear a little bit of traffic, but not the same. And for comparison here, I went from quiet, hearing the breeze and the trees, kind of country living, and then living in Houston. They raised the freeways up high because why the evacuations and things like that. Want to make sure that there's a way for escape and stuff. Well, you can hear the freeway, and that town has so many people, and it never shuts down.
It just like resonates because it's so high in the air.
Over 7 miles away, it sounds like the freeway is in your backyard.
Isn't that nice?
And we didn't realize how loud it was until we went to go visit my parents in North Carolina, and then for one Christmas, and then we came back and we're like, holy crap, it is so loud here. And it resonates with your head. So there's a certain type of people that loves that energy and that consistency and that white noise. And then there's other people where it's like, I need to decompress from that.
Yeah.
And so Murfreesboro is definitely a bigger town. It reminds me a little of Boise, Idaho, which is another area in Idaho that I've lived.
That's a good comparison.
Actually, I would say that there was the homes that we lived in over there were rentals. So, so I mean, the homes that I counted in there were more homes that we had purchased. Either I lived with family that purchased it, or my husband had purchased it, whereas everything else was like transition homes. So technically I've lived in more places than that number. But anyway, so it did bring it back down to that smaller realm. Like I love that I can go into a grocery store and you can strike up a pleasant conversation and meet interesting people, and you can, if you want a little bit of that busy life, but then it's this Murfreesboro to me has this weird mix of not so much like the big nighttime city life, but it can have a little feel of that, but then a little bit of that country feel. It's really an interesting eclectic feel to me. And then of course that college-y feel too. It's an interesting mix.
Yeah, Well, now, Tennessee's been definitely becoming a melting pot in the last few years,
Yes.
especially
Yeah.
since the housing boom and all that type of stuff.
Mhm.
Tennessee is what California was in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And it's, I've mentioned that before. And it's, even Rachel was on with us yesterday, and Rachel was talking about moving from New York. And she's like, you'd walk into a bodega or a gas station or whatever you want to call it, grocery store. And she said, you keep your head down and you just don't really talk to people. And
Yeah.
here they'll come up and like pick your baby up and be like, oh, they're so cute. And they're like,
Mhm.
why are you touching my kid? So it's not a
Oh.
bad thing. It's something you have to adapt to.
It is. That was one thing is in Houston, I always felt like I had to watch over my shoulder because you do in some respects, because while there are a lot of friendly people there are also not a lot of friendly people there. It's such a melting pot of people.
Everybody here just seems to, granted, the majority of people here seem to self-regulate and just make sure that there's just good people in this town. So, well, I really appreciate having you on here and talking through some of this. I know there's so much more to unpack and things like that.
Oh
And,
yeah.
but I really want to talk with you regarding, your expertise and, your general life experience, because I think that really attests to how good of an agent you are and how you can service clients that are going through these transition periods, either it being a transitional home or stepping stone or a permanent home that they're going to set permanent roots in. And having that understanding, I think, as an agent is just something that can't be taught. It has to be lived. And, having you on our team and having that resource is, I think, crucial to our success and servicing clients and the variety of clients that we get that come through our doors. So we're looking forward to seeing what comes out of you, and keep up all your hard work. We need to hop back on here again, and I need to learn about the other 22 and a half homes that you've lived in and where else you've lived. So,
oh, don't forget the tornado that we drove through.
Oh gosh, that's another.
That was in a whole different state, just FYI. For those of you who didn't know, Wyoming does get tornadoes.
We're not getting into tornadoes right now. I'm not having that conversation. They're not that big of a deal.
Oh no, it wasn't.
As long as you have no fear.
Yeah.
I don't like tornadoes, but I don't know. Another topic, another time.
Yes, but you know what? That's just it. Tons of life experience, and we'll have to go over and unpack that another time.
Oh yeah, and we need to learn about spinning wool here maybe in the future too. So, hey guys, if you guys have any other questions for Kerri, I'll make sure to put her contact information in the description below. Feel free and reach out to her. Text or call works great, or schedule an appointment for a Zoom or for an upcoming phone call as well. Look forward to seeing you guys here in the near future. Hope you guys have a great week. Kerri, thank you for coming on, and thanks guys. Take care.